Hey, good afternoon, everyone, or I guess good morning for Angelo and some of our Midwest folks. Still got an hour or two left here in the morning, but thanks for joining another ATS University. My name is Zach Allison. I'm the ATS National Accounts Manager, working with architectural and engineering firms all across Canada, as well as all across the US, as I help fill until we can backfill that California position that we're looking at. But if this is your first ATS University, thank you for joining us. ATS, if you don't know, is a product selection, product configuration tool that's free for designers. I see a number of names on here that I know are building projects on the ATS SpecTool regularly. So thank you for using the service, and hopefully it keeps bringing value to you. We are sponsored by a number of different manufacturers. We've got 30 or 40 different manufacturers on the spec tool. They give us the product information so that we can be as accurate as possible, so that we can help you actually configure your product. For things like shower floors that we're going to be discussing today, there's obviously your general base models, but there's a lot of different options. There's different sizing, different configurations, and those little small aspects of the model number are easy to overlook, and that's really where the spec tool shines. Plus, of course, being a rule engine based system, where once you put in your location, it will help you select the appropriate product to meet barrier-free code for your location. And that's what we're really going to be discussing today. We've got Angelo here from GWBD. I'm sure you're going to cover the company in a little bit of detail as we dive in, so I won't steal your thunder. But Stern Williams, prior Fiat, great products, great brands that have been in the market for a long time. And we're going to cover how they tie into ADA compliance. Obviously, yeah, I know there's a number of Canadian folks on here. I'll try to translate into some of the Canadian codes. But, one of the issues we have in Canada is that there are some very specific regional codes surrounding various fixtures. And in fact, if you are from BC, we are starting into our provincial breakdown over the summer for the various barrier-free codes across provinces. So BC is coming up next week. I'm sure we've got Alberta and Ontario and a number of other provinces on the docket. I do leave the Quebec building code presentation to my colleague Melanie out of Montreal. Her French is significantly better than mine. I can barely skate by. But I guess with all that, one last thing I'll mention. Of course, we do have everyone muted upon entry, but I will be managing and monitoring the chat and QA field. So if you have any questions along the way, I'll bring them up to Angelo when we get a good moment. Try to keep it topical. And of course, though this is not an approved and accredited CEU from AIA, it is going to be a very in-depth presentation, and we will provide our ATS certificate of attendance. So if you have self-reporting hours for like your CPD hours, your PEO hours, where it's okay to have a self-report, then you can use that, and we'll have that certificate sent out on Fridays. So thank you very much for spending some time with us today. Looking forward to learning more, Angela.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Zach. My name is Angelo Balstreri. I am Marketing and Sales Operations Manager with GWBD Operations. That is three different companies, as Zach had pointed out. We have prior products, Stern and Fiat. We'll kind of talk about those here in a moment. Today's presentation will primarily focus on Stern Williams and Fiat offerings. I'm very glad that you talked about the Canada crosses, Zach, because you're absolutely right. With the ADA, that's a federal thing on the U.S. side. Once we get to Canada, and we're going to talk about that a little bit in depth. And any insights you guys have, please, put it in the chat, put it in the questions. I'm hoping Zach maybe can fill in any blanks that I may fall short on. I will be the first to tell you I am not an expert. I will say I've become an expert in a lot of this within the last week or two putting this presentation together. But for myself, as a sales and a marketing persona, this is not my expertise. So if you throw me any curveballs, I'm going to do my best to address, but at the same time, I am one of those people that if you were to ever bring something up throughout the presentation that we don't know, I will most definitely dig in. And I'm sure Zach can maybe give me some follow-up information that we could reach out and address anything that maybe can't be covered today.
Yeah.
But leading into this, again, just kind of a quick little overview of who we are and why we have a little bit of, let's say, justification to talk about some of this. We wanted to note who we are as a company. Now, GWBD is our parent company. It operates 3 different manufacturers. We started with Prior Products. In fact, the owners of Prior were the ones that began the GWBD operation. So Prior was our first initial manufacturer. The owners of the company have been involved since the early 90s. But Prior goes way further back than that. I mean, they were established in 1881 by a German immigrant, Antoine Prior, hence the name Prior. And they were a brass foundry here in the Midwest, right outside of the Kansas City area, where we are actually still today. We're not at that same location they were at 1881, but we're probably about 20-30 miles south of where we began, and we're still in Kansas City today. We are a manufacturer of frost-proof hose bibs. Essentially, 95% of what we're manufacturing here in our Grandview plant is going to have some type of hose connection, and that's residential, that's commercial, that's ground irrigation, roof hydrants. We cover the gamut. Pretty much anything you're going to connect a hose to, Prior manufactures that. Again, very successful line. We are not going to dabble too much into this one today for the all intents purposes of covering the ADA shower floors and the Terrazzo side of the business. That falls on our 2 newer companies. First one being Stern Williams. So in 2021 or 2021, GWBD was actually formed around that time to help us acquire a new manufacturing opportunity out of southern Missouri. That is Stern Williams. They manufacture terrazzo mop basins, shower floors, and outdoor drinking fountains. And we are dabbling a little bit more into some stainless steel options for some of our mop basins. But these are our bread and butter items. And Stern Williams has been doing it since 1962. In fact, Stern Williams is a huge part of the reason we're involved with ATS today. The previous owner of Stern Williams up to that point was actually a big partner of ATS, and we kind of fell into that, and we've loved that partnership. It's worked great. In fact, we've rolled the other companies in as well, and we're starting to build that out. But this is probably the most versatile of the 3 companies for us within the ATS platform. And this is one of the ones that we will be covering today. These are made in America products that we are making right here in southern Missouri and shipping all across the country and in North America. So we actually, I'm sure, like you had noted, Zach, we have some Canadian customers and engineers maybe on the line today. These are well known up in the Canada market as well as the US market. But again, just giving you a little breakdown of who we are. This is actually our team. You can see we're not a huge giant conglomerate. It's just everyday people manufacturing these things by hand, day in and day out. And then in 2022, we actually had an opportunity. It actually kind of landed in our lap. We weren't quite ready to acquire another company at the time, but let's just say everything aligned. And it worked out perfectly in regards to American Standard Lixil was looking to get out of the business of terrazzo and these molded stone. And they actually had reached out to the previous owner of Stern Williams and had indicated, hey, are you interested? And he goes, I already sold my company. You should talk to these guys. And lo and behold, they reached out to us. And I said, stars aligned. We made it work, and we found a way to get into this side of it. And this exposed us to not only the terrazzo mop basins and shower floors, which we were doing with now the sister company Stern Williams, but then it expanded into molded stone offerings and laundry tubs and things of that nature, which gave us a little bit more depth on what we could offer through some of our companies. So these 3 companies consist of GWBD. They build up that partnership. These are our sister companies. We work well together. We try to move things through each other. And again, we're not done. One of the primary focuses of GWBD is we love domestic made products. That means that we're making things here in the States. Even Somerset, Kentucky is where we're based for Fiat products. That's where this plant is located. For us, we're continuing to look for opportunities to expand that footprint and to find other avenues. So don't think that we're done. We're looking to continue to find and build on this namesake. But in regards to today, we're going to be focused on Fiat and Stern Williams, primarily looking at ADA compliance for shower floors. So one of the things I want to make sure we're noting here is that we are only focusing on the shower floor section of this. I do dabble a little bit in some other additional things because it's important for you as an engineer, specifier, architect that you understand that we're looking at walls, we're looking at grab bars, we're looking at shower fixtures and handhelds and benches and stuff. We will touch on those very briefly, but this presentation was more focused on the shower floor aspect that is going to start your ADA compliance and then everything that's going to go on top of that. And we'll go through that a little bit as we build this out. But I just wanted to give everybody a heads up that it's not going to be that in depth in regards to all those additional fixtures and accessories. We're focusing on what we manufacture here with Stern Williams and at Fiat Products. So what is ADA? This is the American Disabilities Act. This launched in 1990, and it was part of the Civil Rights Law. That actually was enacted in July 26, 1990 by George W. Bush, was the one signed it into law. Of course, with anything that's, throughout the plumbing industry, it's not enacted on that particular day where it's enforced at the same time. There was a little leeway to get everybody up to the standards that they needed to be. So this started to get enforced in the early of 1992 timeline. Now, what it really focused on was prohibiting the discrimination based on disabilities and ensuring the equal access to public spaces. That's in buildings, transportation, all of that. Now, that was back in 1990. Of course, things change, right? Things get updated. We're like, they didn't really call out all the necessities. So back in 2010, the ADA standards kind of got evolved a little bit, and we began to really fine tune some of the things that needed to be addressed that weren't really covered in that 1990 enforcement. So in 2010, there was some revisions to it that provided very clear specifications of what things needed to be measured and how they're utilized and things of that nature. And one of the stipulations is calling out that, as a designer and a mechanical contractor, these are very important for us to make sure that any public entity has to have readily accessible and usable for individuals with disabilities, or again, you're against the code that is calling that out, and you may have a lawsuit or a fine. These are things that are very important that we're paying attention to. You'll see the logo in the bottom right. This is one of the more universal terms and logos that you'll see that calls this out. As Zach had noted earlier, this is mainly the ADA. We will touch base on some of the Canada codes and things later, but this one's particularly focused on that ADA. Now, when we're talking about the shower floor specifically, these are covered under that 2010 ADA standard. There's a section 608 that focuses on shower compartments. So that's really the one we're going to kind of hover around during this presentation today. And really, there's four, let's call it, tiers that we have to make sure we're checking those boxes to make sure we're following this ADA compliance. The threshold. The threshold has to have a certain tolerance in regards to either 0 or low. We'll dig into these things a little bit more in depth as we go through this. Slip resistance. We got to make sure that you are able to get in and get out with any possibility of slipping on the floor. Proper drainage. So the slope of the floor has to be a certain requirements. And to me, one of the biggest things, and this is something that we've learned over these last few years, and it's actually changed some of the stuff that we're doing, and we'll talk about that here. But even some of the products that were initially called ADA compliant, we start to slowly realize, maybe we're not, and we've actually had to pull back. I think when we first started with one of the companies, Fiat, they had a couple dozen that they were saying were ADA, and like we're really digging in and we're finding out those dimensions don't quite match what we're supposed to hit. And I will say, some engineers, some inspectors were the ones that really brought it to our attention. And again, we learned this over the last few years. If you remember, leading up to 2021, we only knew frost-proof hydrants, shower floors, and stuff like that. This is all new to us. So we've kind of evolved this over time to make sure we're doing this. And it's actually a big thing of what we're thinking about when we design or possibly change designs for things are these dimensions and these turning clearances. This is very important. I'm going to show you something on these here in a second. But there's two main types of ADA shower floors. We have roll-in shower floors, pretty simple, where the user can actually roll the wheelchair into the unit itself, where they can actually use that to get into the shower and bathe themselves. Then there's the transfer type of floor. This one is going to be where the wheelchair user can get next to the unit and transfer themselves from the chair to the shower stall. And we're going to cover all of these during this presentation today. Now, one of the main things, and this is the piece that we've learned over a little bit of time here, is the dimensions. So I really wanted to kind of lean in on this before we explored the other options that we're going to see here. But when we talk about dimensions for these shower floors, there's a few things that we have to keep in mind. For a particular ADA, there's a very specific requirement for a inside interior measurement. So we cannot measure exterior to exterior on any side of that dimension. This does not count for the ADA. What ADA is looking for is the inside wall and lip for the usable space inside the unit. So when we are, and this is one of the things that really kind of caught us off guard, is because we were under the impression, and these are things that we've learned over time, is that the outside dimensions cannot be utilized when it comes to ADA compliance. And I will say that the transfer one, and we'll highlight that here in a minute, is very specific. There is no minimum. It is a hard 36-inch by 36-inch. You got to be within that parameter. And we're gonna throw a little light on some of that here in a minute in regards to, it's not just the floor. We got to think about the walls and stuff as well. Now, looking at ADA roll-in showers. So that shower floor, one of the other things, again, that's come to light is we can't include the ramp. And I think this was one of the things that actually started to kind of shed a little bit more light, where we've learned over time that I cannot use dimensions A through B. Actually, this B is not in the exact location. B should probably be right down here at the bottom. As you can see, this is the beginning of the floor. That B would run this line. I can't use that as my measurement. In fact, what I have to use is the F, that's that inside line to inside line, and I can't include this ramp. I can only include the E measurement to factor in my ADA measurements. And we're going to go into those a little bit more, but I wanted to really call those out because this is what we've learned over our very short time in this business with these floors, is those are the measurements that you have to use. And I think that changed some of us. And like I said, it reduced our ADA compliant floors drastically, which is okay because we're learning. But again, now we're looking at, should we redesign some of this to accommodate these? So this is some of the stuff that we'll go through in a little bit more depth as we go throughout, but I wanted to call those out because this is very important for ADA. So going through the three different options for ADA requirements on shower floors. So the first one we're going to talk about is a roll-in shower, where your minimum size has to be 30 inches. It says deep. I see it as deep versus 60-inch wide, as you can see on the measurements on the side. This measurement comes from center line to center line. Now, one of the challenges you have, and we're going to address this as we go through each of these, is We only control the floors. What the walls get built to is a little different in regards to what the mechanical plumber is going to be putting in, or your tile is going to be putting in. They also have to keep these things in mind. Now, the nice thing about the roll-in showers, these are a minimum. So if you're actually exceeding this, we're still covered. So we just have to give plenty of clearance to get into the floor and then to be able to move around and to adjust and to change direction inside the floor. So if you actually were to have a 30-inch by 60-inch floor, again, on those inner lips, that's going to be compliant. If your walls are going to be a tile and they don't go past those curbs, and our curbs, shoulders, whatever you want to call them, roughly are around an inch to an inch and a half. So if you're putting in a 1/4-inch tile and a 1/4-inch sub backer plate, we're at a 1/2 inch. That means that you're still within your parameters because the roll-in is looking for a minimum. So we're covered there. Now your clearance on the adjacent opening, so this is your section where you're rolling in, also has to have the same clearance of a 30 by 60. So essentially, we're going to be 60 wide by 60 long for the all-encompassing unit. Now the shower itself only has to be a minimum of 30 inches on this side, but again, you need that extra 30-inch here to roll in to be able to get into the actual shower floor itself. Now when it comes to a curb, there is a very fine line of the depth of this floor. Now, in many cases, the flooring can actually be adjusted in regards to what kind of lip are we going to put on this. Our shower floors are manufactured with a certain lip on the end. However, when you build up a tile floor or you build up a subfloor on the other side of that, you are now factoring in that depth of what that entrance is going to look like. When we're talking about the requirements that are going to be on here, the curb itself leading into the roll-in shower cannot be over a 1/2 inch tall. In fact, there's even more specific requirements that if you are looking down below, if it is a straight 90, so if we have a 90-degree bevel, I can actually only have a 1/4 inch height. If it is a 1/2 inch, I must have a bevel lip on the ends. As you can see here, to build up to the 1/2 inch, I can't have a 90 that goes all the way up and over. There must be a bevel to accommodate that 1/2 inch lip. Of course, the floors also have to be slip resistant. We have to have reinforced walls so the grab bars can adhere. We're going to have grab bars on 2 separate sides, and you have to have a handheld shower. Again, we'll touch base on those briefly as we go through this, but these are requirements looking at specifically on the floor side that we're looking at for this particular roll-in. Now, there is another option for a roll-in where we call it the alternate roll-in shower. You can see not too far off, but what we've changed is the entrance to that. So we have a 36-inch where the previous one was 30. Now with this, we have to have a 36-inch by 60. So that 60 still stays the same, but we're giving a deeper inset of that 36-inch. We're adding another 6 inches to that, and we have a 36-inch minimum for the entry into the roll-in shower. Your curb and everything stays the same as we had on the other one. You have that 2 different options of a 90 or a bevel lip to get up to your 1/2 inch, and the same is going to hold true. We're going to have slip-resistant floors, reinforced walls for the grab bars on 2 different walls, and a handheld shower option as well. Now, for the roll-ins, the benches and the seats, not required. They are suggested as an option, but they're not required like they will be on the next one we're going to get into. And that's why they're kind of on the dotted line here, that they're not a requirement for these roll-in shower floors. However, on our next one, the ADA for transfer showers changes a little bit. This one to us is probably the harder one to hit. And here's why. We understand that there is no minimum. This is a straight up 36-inch by 36-inch. We have floors that accommodate this. But again, that's the floor. The issue that we've countered with some inspectors in the field is our floors meet the standard. Our lip, our inside lip to inside lip is 36 by 36. The installer that's putting in the walls also has to make sure that their walls are coming all the way up to that curb, so they can also make sure the walls are 36-inch by 36-inch. One of the challenges that we've had, and again, use that example we talked about earlier, if you have a quarter-inch thick not subfloor, cement backer board that you're installing, and then you have a quarter-inch tile, so you've come in a half-inch. Well, you're now going to be probably looking at almost 37-inch by maybe 36 and a half, 36, depending on your back wall, out of compliance. This is the challenge that we've run into before, is that the walls themselves are not meeting it, and they come back and they point at the shower floor, but the shower floor meets the requirement. But it's the walls that have to also do it, and it means the walls have to come in a little bit thicker. It means we have to make the walls a little thicker to match up with the curbs on the inside. Now, your minimum entry also has to have a 36-inch, and you'll see on the front here that you have to have a minimum of 48-inch deep by 36-inch clearance to allow the wheelchair user to back up and shift over to the bench. Now, this one's, as I said, requiring a bench. You must have a folded or non-folding seat in the unit for a transfer for them to shift over to that particular unit. Now, again, you need the reinforced grab bars and the slip resistance. And I do believe we're going to jump into that on the next slide here to give you a little bit more in depth there. Again, that's not our specialty. We're primarily looking at the shower floors themselves. But when it comes to the grab bars and the shower controls and the seats, you know, the ADA, the 2010 ADA rules and requirements do give us a little bit of documentation on what we're looking for. For the grab bars themselves, they got to be installed on at least 2 walls. They have to be mounted between 33 to 36 inches from the floor, and they have to be able to support up to 250 pounds of force. This is where you have to have reinforced walls. You cannot just put a grab bar anchored into a floor with no backing on it. It's not going to be able to live up to that 250 pounds of force. Now, when it comes to the shower controls and the sprayers themselves, you know, those have to be located within a certain reach point where they can reach it from their wheelchair or from the bench. That means that you're looking at anywhere between a 38 and 48 inches from the floor. In fact, if we look at the bottom bullet there, there's the mounting bracket itself. So this is where you're going to adhere that shower control and that sprayer to the wall. That's actually a little bit in a smaller window than that 38 by 48. We're hitting that 39 inches by 47 inches is where it's got to be mounted and secured to that wall and within that parameter. Now, you do need to make sure that your shower controls are operable with one hand. This is part of that ADA compliance. They cannot have to grab it and twist. It's almost got to be a lever where it's easy to turn. And then the hose itself that's going to be on the sprayer. So many of these are calling for a hose that you can pull off that mounting bracket and you can use to spray yourself and move it around. That hose has to be at least 59 inches long to be able to accommodate the ADA compliance. The last piece of it is that stationary or that folding seat. The seat dimensions are very specific. They got to be at least 18 and 19 inches deep, and they have to be 30 inches wide. Again, we don't manufacture any of these items today. I'm sure many of these manufacturers out there know these specifications, but these are the dimensions that you're going to want to look for. I would imagine many of them are offering this because they know the compliance that's needed. The seat itself has to be mounted between 17 to 19 inches above the floor to accommodate easy transfers from one unit from the other. Regarding
Yeah,
the
one thing we
slope,
can just
yep, go,
pause really
yep,
quick
yep, will
there.
do.
I just wanted to cover a couple of the small differences across kind of Canada to the US so far.
Yep,
Uh,
that's perfectly fine. And like I said, I have a slide again there. Do you want me to go back at all, Zach, to any of the slides?
Yeah, just one slide back would be perfect.
Yep,
Um, we talked a lot about thresholds before this. The nice thing is that the thresholds have kind of aligned over the years. That was one of the challenges for a while, but we are 13 millimeters for the most part, which is that half inch for the beveled threshold for the roll-ins. The operable with one hand, same thing. I love the term, operable with a closed fist is really the idea that you're going for. And it's not, that takes the twisting and grasping out of it. There's
yep,
a slight difference on the hose length. Some provinces are aligned at that 59-inch. Some have moved towards a 69-inch hose. Although I'll bring up another concern there. When you have the longer hose, obviously make sure you are looking for a little bit of a higher quality handheld, because that thing's going to drop 10 inches further and now it might drop to the ground. So keep that in mind. Maybe even buy a couple extra and put them in the maintenance department if you need it. Other than that, I think there's a lot of similarity. And great thing if any of the people on the call were on last week, we had the architectural specialist coming in talking about grab bars and seats and everything like that. So there's a lot of great detail, which ties me to one of the questions we had. People were asking how you can review the presentation after the fact. Is you're giving such great info, they want to be able to come back and reference you another point in time, Angelo. So I'll show you at the end how you can find it on ATSspec.com. We do record all of our webinars, and we have a section there for the webinar recordings. Shockingly, it's called like ATSspec.com/webinar recordings or something like that. But I'll put the link in chat, and you can get a copy of that. And they did ask for a PDF copy of the presentation. So if you can send that over, I'll make sure that when we are sending out our certificate of attendance, we include that PDF for you.
yep,
So other
that's
than
not a
that,
problem
I
at
haven't
all.
seen any other questions coming in, so you must be nailing it so far.
Well, we'll leave that one up to the end to find out if anybody's going to throw tomatoes or not. I do find it very interesting that you brought up a very valid point. I see that the shower controls and the sprayers have to be, let's say a maximum of 48 inches or, that mounting bracket of 47. But if your hose is 59 inch, you're absolutely right. I mean, you're leaving it up to the possibility that thing's going to fall all the way to the floor and which I'm sure there's justifications for them. And I'm glad you called that out because I did not call out that 69-inch long in the upcoming slide. So that is an interesting fact about certain provinces that are going to be a requirement of a longer hose.
Yeah, it took a pain when it first changed, but we're getting through it now.
Got it. Got it. When it comes to slope and the drainage of the particular floors themselves, obviously, the shower has to be sloped appropriately. Now, there was a slight variance here, with some online research and what ADA is calling for on what they call a slope, and it's very marginal. What we saw was the ADA slope was 1 to 48 ratio, which is right around a 2.08% slope. But then we found other things that said a max slope of 1 to 50, which is a 2%. Again, very small variance there. So I'm honestly not for sure which one, but we're going to probably lean more on that ADA slope is at that 1 to 48. But you can see such a marginal room of what they're calling max and ADA. But what we're trying to accomplish is you want to ensure that the water is not going to pull up underneath the end user. It's got to point towards the drain and give that ability where it's not going to sit under them and it's not going to pull up. The other piece of this is the drain cover itself. There is a specification that goes through what those have to meet. If you have like a trench style drain, or if you have just a round, I think they call it a pointed drain in some of the terminology with the ADA terms. If that's just that center drain, we primarily focus on the center drain. I do believe we have a couple models that have that trench style drain. But what we're looking for is if you are using any of those style of drains, your grate or your cover has to have smaller openings, right? So if we're worried about a wheelchair coming in, we can't let that wheelchair get caught in any of those grooves. So there are certain requirements that your spaces have to be less than a half inch. And I apologize because I know that little bullet says less than or equal to a half inch. I believe it is very specific. I couldn't find just the less than arrow when I was putting my presentation together. I do believe it has to be less than a half inch in one direction. And any elongated openings, they have to be perpendicular to the travel motion. So if you're rolling your wheelchair over this, your elongated openings cannot be parallel with your wheelchair going in and out, because that leaves it open to the point where you're rolling over that hole where your wheelchair wheel could potentially get stuck in one of the drain slots. So those are covered within that particular section of ADA when it comes to the drain covers specifically. Material and safety, very, very quick on this. We just got to make sure they're non-slip materials. That was one of the requirements that we talked about. For us, there's a couple processes we do when we manufacture the Terrazzo. A lot of it is once you manufacture your Terrazzo and you get it out of your mold, one of our steps typically is to sand it down, get it smooth, and we fill in any holes or anything like that. We actually don't do that on some of our shower floors that are meeting this ADA, because it gives that grit to give a little bit more of a rougher texture, which is your slip resistance, which is what we're after for that particular. And you don't want to use any glossy finishes that are going to make that floor slippery. But we also got to make sure that we're easy to maintain and clean, and that we're supporting any of those benches or anything like that, which we're going to get into that at the tail end of this presentation, talking about what Terrazzo codes are required to meet. And some of that is maintaining, easy to clean, and the structural support of that Terrazzo. Now, I know this is Zach, I may lean on you a little bit here. So this is kind of just a quick little comparison. The next couple slides are just showing some of, really how this transfers over to US to Canada. I mean, obviously in the US here, we're governed by federal law. The ADA law is a universal thing across the country. It's enforced by the Department of Justice. And everybody has to follow this. Well, in Canada, obviously, it's slightly different, right? You're governed, and your standards kind of go under that CSA B651, and there's certain things outlined in the National Building Code, but as Zach had noted, the provinces are different, right? So you guys have different province codes. For example, we threw in that Ontario building code that may have slightly different specifications. Again, I did not see that about the 69-inch hose when we were putting this together. So that's the slight difference between the two. Is we're in the US, we're kind of governed by one that is all-encompassing. But in Canada, you guys have to follow a lot more different guidelines, because it may be different by the province. And, those are just things to kind of be aware of, because you obviously are knowing that there's certain things that are going to be different for different areas where your jobs may be taking place. But, kind of looking at some of those specific requirements, this is, I think, to Zach's point, everything's kind of aligned over the years. You'll see that some of the requirements are pretty much spot on. Your threshold you nailed at the 13 millimeters, right at that half inch. That the seats got to be in between that 17, 19 inches. The grab bars are the same. The shower controls, that shower hose, I think you said that there's a province that calls out that 69-inch, but for the most part, we're kind of aligned when it comes to the ADA compliance and what we're looking at in Canada. I think there's a lot of similarities today. Obviously, Canada, uses the metric system, and we love our standard. I don't know why. I always find it so funny as I've traveled the world. I don't know why we decided to create our own measuring system, but that's for another topic. Applications of ADA shower floors, obviously, anything for public space, state, local governments. And again, this is kind of more on that ADA. I don't know if Zach's got any different insights on the Canadian codes, but we're looking at schools, government buildings, hospitals, recreational centers, senior living facilities. You got hotels, commercial lodgings. we're even starting to see some of that come through on multifamily, on these apartments and things. Under some of the Fair Housing Act and local plumbing codes, you got certain requirements. And one of the things that we found really interesting at the bottom there, man, there's a lot more people in today's society that have what would be classified as a disability. I mean, this is a CDC bullet that we got from a thing posted in 2024 that 1 in 4 Americans, I assume even high, if we look at this, I'm sure it's going to carry over to Canada as well, is we have 70 million Americans today that have a disability. That means that these are going to be utilized for a long time and something that is very important in many different applications of what we're doing. And when you, as an engineer or specifier, are looking to choose something, I mean, you got to make sure that the dimensions are good. You're going to have to lean on the manufacturer, look at our specs, use the data provided. If there is an ADA pre-certified product, those obviously you want to make sure we're leaning in on. You want to make sure it's compatible with whatever you're using. If you're using grab bars and benches and shower controls, we want to make sure there's compatibility there. And work with us, work with the manufacturers. We can assist. In fact, Stern Williams and Fiat, we can customize just about anything. If you had a certain requirement that you needed to meet, again, like a roll-in floor, we only need to hit a minimum. So if we want to exceed that, we can. And there's customization. I mean, we have plenty of standard products today that can meet some of these requirements. But if you wanted to go down the line of designing something and specifying a custom model, we can do this. And just remember, I mean, it's very important that we are paying attention to a failure to comply could result in lawsuits and fines. So these are very important as a engineer and an architect and a designer, what you're required to make sure we're following and making sure you guys are up to date on what's happening, you're compliant, and you're planning this in advance so we can work together and get these things collaborated together throughout the line. For Fiat, again, we started with a lot more SKUs, but we've drastically fallen off because of some of these requirements that we've learned are not really ADA. Now, I will tell you, the hope is this is going to change. We need to look at some of our molds and some of our ways to just get these things, because some of this stuff we're literally off like a 1/2 inch to an inch. But that's important, right? That 1/2 inch to an inch has to hit. So you should see more from us on Fiat offerings that are going to be compliant. Again, just a couple quick highlights that we're making this in Somerset, Kentucky. We have integral tiling flange options. We have integral drain, slip resistance, and color options that we have available that you can go through. I mean, our standard is the black and white. This is this one here. This is a standard, but you can change colors at no additional cost, I believe, for a lot of our offerings, and we have several different to choose from. For Stern, we have slightly more, but again, it reduced in regards to what we had available because we've learned some things over these last few years about what is compliant, what needs to be hit. And again, we expect this number of SKUs to grow as we make some small adjustments on our end to adjust some of our molds that we're manufacturing these Terrazzo pieces. A lot of similar things that we have with Stern Williams as we do with the Fiat, but we have more colors available, more options available through the Stern Williams. And Stern Williams actually applies a sealant to theirs before it ships. On the Fiat side, it does not come sealed. Those are required to be sealed in the field. Terrazzo should be sealed. That protects the concrete in the Terrazzo itself and helps with a couple different things, but it is required that Terrazzo gets sealed. Stern does it before, Fiat does it in the field. So just a few things to kind of keep in mind. And then a couple quick little things is, ADA, we're focusing on safety, inclusivity. We want to design, and Fiat and Stern have these things available, but just expect we're going to have more coming in the near future as we make some small adjustments on our end. I know I've got probably about 14 minutes left, so we're going to go through this next section pretty quickly here, so I don't go over time and leave Zach maybe a minute or two at the end here to bring us home. But when it comes to Terrazzo itself, we've learned a lot over the few years owning these two additional companies that there are certain requirements that we have to live up to on Terrazzo. The material itself, but the performance and the durability, how it's installed, and the slip resistance. These are all things that are important when we're manufacturing Terrazzo. Your mop sinks have to have a 1/4 inch gap, and this is one of the things that we want to make sure many people understand. I don't think this is in the specs by any means, and I don't know if it's something that should be. One of the things we've learned where failures happen on installs for shower floors and for mop basins is they don't put it in a mortar bed. This should be treated just like tile. When you lay tile, you put it in a bed of mortar so it settles appropriately and it gets nestled into that and it's a solid piece. If you were to install this straight onto a subfloor, the problem is there's a little play that essentially can crack your Terrazzo, which we do see in the field. And there's times where we're able to apply it with one of our repair kits and take it. But we have also said, if it's not in a bed of mortar, that's your first crack. There's going to be more. So one of the important things to understand when you install Terrazzo, and this is probably more for the mechanicals than it is for the specifiers, got to be in a mortar bed. You're going to have a 3-inch waste pipe, and it's got to be able to withstand up to 150 degrees temperature water. Shower floors that very similar. There's got to be a minimum threshold of 2 inches, and it's got to comply with certain pressure and temp ratings, which we'll get into. Now, why would you want Terrazzo? Well, Terrazzo is extremely durable. It's probably one of the most durable materials out there when it comes to this particular product. It's going to last. In fact, I would probably put money down that many of these pieces will probably outlast many of the buildings. There's times where these things are going to last over 100 years. So very, very durable. They're non-porous, easy to clean. We can customize colors if aesthetic is an important thing. There's fire resistance, so these are non-combustible. You don't have to worry about the smoke that would come off if there was a fire. They're repairable. Some of the materials that are out there, if you dent them, you scratch them, you break them, sometimes they're done. You got to replace them at that point. A lot of this is concrete. We offer repairable kits. If you chunked out a big old piece of it, if you hit something too hard, a lot of times we can actually repair that. One of the biggest things that we struggle with is, again, those cracks. If it wasn't installed properly, that makes it a little bit more difficult. You're putting a Band-Aid on it, which is not going to be ideal down the line. And then sustainability, the materials made of sustainable products could be recycled. A lot of things that are just beneficial from using concrete and marble granite chips. Ideal applications. You want high volume places to use Terrazzo. So if you're going to see a lot of cleaning, your janitorial team is going to be doing a lot of day-to-day activity. We want something robust. So if you're hospitals, airports, schools, somewhere where you're going to get high traffic environments, that is the ideal application for Terrazzo. It is the most robust to live up to the more heavy rigor jobs that are going to be thrown at it. Now, what we have to go through. So with Terrazzo, there is a certain code that requires Terrazzo to meet certain requirements. And I will tell you today, I believe IATMO only has Fiat and Stern Williams labeled under IATMO approved to go through the certifications. And some of the things that they're testing and they're looking for are these 5 little bullets. So there's a thermal shock. So they're taking about 250 cycles of dumping 50-degree water into the component, and then they're taking right after that 150 degrees. And that thermal shock is the expansion of the concrete and retraction. So expanding, retracting, and that temperature change is helping with that thermal shock. Well, your product has to pass 250 cycles of that to ensure that it is not damaged and it's not cracking. The strength test, this goes back to what we were talking about with that ADA compliance. You got to be able to hold up to all the accessories and the wheelchairs and all of that. Our terrazzo can hold up to 3,000 PSI. So I'm challenging you. You can throw just about anything at it. It's going to hold up. There's even a UV test. Now, I would tell you this one to me, I don't understand it. Most of these are installed indoors. You're not going to see a whole lot of UV, exposure, but we have to be able to pass a UV test. And the way they do it is they use a color spectrometer where they'll look at the sampling before. The bottom right corner is their UV tester. And what it actually does is it has a strong UV light right in the middle, and it actually puts it on like a little spinning carousel, and it'll actually rotate for 200 hours. And then they'll take that sampling off and they'll put it right back onto that color spectrometer, and they'll see if the color change. And I'm sure there's some kind of variance they'll allow, but it can't be beyond that. It's got to be able to hold up to that 200 hours of UV light. Then there's stain resistance. This one's a pretty tough one where they're going to put a sampling, and that's that other picture you see there. They're taking little droplets of all these different types of stains, and they put those on your terrazzo sampling. They let it sit for 16 hours, and then they'll come through and they'll try and clean it off. And there is some limitations of what they'll do, where they'll apply just a simple cleaning agent to try and get it off. But there is even a little bit of a regard where they'll allow a little bit of a, let's call it like an emery cloth, where you can kind of scratch down just a little bit. There are certain requirements that they say that you can't go too much. You just got to be able to do it enough. But this is one of the ones that we have to hit. That one's probably one of the harder ones for a manufacturer to hit as well. And then, of course, they got to be cleanable, without using some harsh chemicals. That's one of the great things about the terrazzo, is that it is very durable and it doesn't require a lot of harsh chemicals because it is a non-porous type of product. Most of the stains and stuff sit at that high level and they're not seeping down into the product itself. So a lot of times just a mild detergent, you can actually clean that off. And again, you can use a light emery cloth, and then we would highly suggest anything you're using with an emery cloth, you would want to reapply a sealant after that as well to make sure we're protecting that for longevity. And then, one of the last things I have is essentially just the final thoughts of, the terrazzo needs to be, code compliance tough. Again, many manufacturers can't meet a lot of the code things, but these are the things that you need to ensure the terrazzo you're utilizing can hold up to these everyday standards. That we're wanting to make sure that they're attractive for a long time, they're easy to clean, and again, they're gonna be there throughout the life of the system. So we want to make sure that you have the right things that can hold up to the everyday challenges that you're going to throw at it. But beyond that, that kind of tidies me up at the end here. I throw it open to questions. I don't know, Zach, if you got anything in the queue there or anything that's come up, this is the time to do so.
No, nothing's coming up so far. I'll take over the share so that you can see it as you go. If anything does come up, let me know.
Wonderful.
I think that one of the interesting things to me there was the amount of testing that goes into that IATMO certification. Like I knew about the thermal shock testing because that's one of the things that's come up for me in the past. But that, like the stain testing, I had no idea. They need to do that for toilets too. I won't divert too fast. I already want to go sidetracking on testing conversations, but I'm going to try to focus in here and just very quickly introduce the SpecTool in case anyone wants to find the products that we were talking about today. So ATSspec.com is the home of the SpecTool, sponsored by Stern Williams, Fiat, prior, GWBD overall, and a number of other manufacturers. It's all free for engineers, architects, interior designers to log in or sign up. Just like every other website, is going to remember your password once you pop it in there. If you do want to access those webinar recordings, they're located right here under the Architects and Engineers tab. In the Learning Hub, you'll see webinar recordings. And then we also have ADA breakdowns and provincial barrier-free guides in our ATS knowledge base. Additionally, we do have templates where we recommend product by application, and I'm going to show you how those work within the SpecTool as well. Once you're in the SpecTool, you can see you've got your own account here. You can share this across your firm. I can share it, to other firms. So if I was working on a project for Zach's engineering firm, I want to share it over to Angelo's architectural firm, I can do that just by entering his email address. He'll have access to the one project. Everything that we do is, project or at least folder based in a sense. There are different degrees of rules assigned to each of these folder types. So you have a quick spec, which is as it sounds, the quickest, simplest way of finding something. Type in shower, start your selection, and download your format. No rule engine applied, just the product configurators. Then we have our project type, where you put in a location. The location is going to be assigning the right rule engine and the right barrier-free database to your system. You're going to select an application, and those are going to start recommending products based on application as well. And then we have masters, which is very similar to a project, but it's more for your repeat work. So I'm sure most firms, most engineers at a firm here, you guys have your internal standards. You can build those on the spec tool so that when you have a new project, you can just drag and drop from that approved master into your new project or quick spec. What that does is help keep everything up to date. So if Stern Williams goes and updates that model number of the shower that met barrier free, and we call it a an ATS ADA recommendation. You change the model number by a digit, you change a piece of the product information, change it from Terrazzo to some other material, then your master is going to be always up to date. That's one of the big benefits of having it on the ATS SpecTool. So I just did a couple things really quick there. I used our left navigation bar here to jump into the projects tab and opened up the shower floor webinar project that I created earlier. You can see I've got a complete configuration here, but I'm going to show you how we can do that. So from this add drawing button on the left, we can either add from our masters and templates, which, like I said, once you have your master here, we could just go to either your masters, our ATS templates, and then you can simply drag and drop. So if I go into, I've got a recreational facility going here, I can find my recreational facilities master template. These are our recommendations, but of course you can set your own preferences. And I could simply drag and drop this over. So again, this could be from your master where you've got outdoor drinking fountains from Stern. We've got additional drinking fountains. We can get a general use shower here, and we can drag and drop multiple products into here as well. So again, this could be from our ATS templates from your own internal masters, or you can do what we used to call the fast way. Now it's the slow way, where we're pointing, clicking, selecting as we go. We go to create new drawings button. We can filter down by the different divisions here. So if you're looking for access doors, you could do your division 8. If you're looking for your grab bars or fire extinguishing systems, we got Strike First on the system now. HVAC, we've got First Go on the system now. And of course, division 22 is where we started. And you can see I've got pinned at the top here my favorite categories. So my shower falls in stores, sinks if I'm looking for a mop sink, or the pet wash station. We didn't cover that today, but pet wash station, great new product. And of course, drinking fountains. So we can go to our shower floor stalls. We're just going to click on the tile. You can see I've got a bunch of different product options in here. I can toggle my ADA. So now it's applying barrier-free code based on the products that we're looking at. And then we can find, say, our 36 by 36, whatever it is, whatever model you wanted. We've got that Fiat series here as well. So depending on if you're in the US, you can go with a nice, larger square. If you're looking for the transfer showers, of course, we can filter down by type and shape as well. All sorts of different options. And the key part of ATS is, again, as we are making our selection, we are updating our model name and number. So once we have done, we get the exact configuration of the product that we selected. We're going to hit add product, and it's going to go into the system selection that we're making. So here you can see it's recommending the rest of the trim that we might need. If you need a shower valve and shower head, or the handheld shower, if you need the grab bars or the seats, everything like that, you can add those, or you can just hit complete and skip to the end. Now you can download it in any one of the formats that you want. You can see I've got all these different checkboxes here. This is everything that I'd want to download. I can deselect and select a single item. I can select the multiple items. I can do the entire product group. I could generate my spec documents. I can even copy them into a different project or into a different product group here. You see, we've got different product groups that we can create. So if this is for my shower floors, I could add a new shower group or a new group for, say, my drinking fountains, and then get into selecting those. Everything from toilets and urinals all the way to, rainwater harvesting systems and backflow and leak detection systems, all sorts of stuff. So let's just download a single item real quick, generate the spec docs. Here you can see we've got submittals, schedules in Excel, product brochures, which are more of the kind of pretty pictures if we're doing decision making with our owner group, with our clients. We may want a, shorter details, highlight the image so that we're reviewing that together. 3 different types of written spec: long, short, CSI 3-part spec. So the US is going to be more predominantly using the CSI 3-part spec. In Canada, we do see a lot more people using our short spec and our long spec. Of course, the manufacturer's spec sheet is embedded into our system as well, and Revit files for all the products on our system. Check the boxes. It'll package up a nice download for you, and you'll be able to take all this information and put it into your own documentation. Again, it all comes down to how do you issue this project to market. Some people will put the manufacturer spec or submittal sheet directly onto their drawings and have a limited written spec. You can do so. You can copy this, put that there. Everything is open and editable as well. So if you need to include alternates, if you need to put in additional systems, we do have the ability to include alternates directly on the spec tool. But if you are looking for your own personal way of writing it, you could always, let's say you're not using a Bobrick shower seat, you could edit that shower seat, take it out, put in whatever it is you need. Or if you don't need the shower seat, maybe you only need the trim and the valve, you can copy and paste this directly into your own written specs. Again, however you write the specs. Some people prefer 3 parts, some people prefer the product section. Lots of different ways that you can go about it. Of course, the Revit as well, which is going to package some of the lightest weight, highest quality Revit available on the market. We build it all ourselves for the manufacturers based on feedback from the engineers and architects. So we have a lot of great feedback on our Revit files. So yeah, that is the very quick version of the intro to the spec tool. Love the product, love the spec tool, love having you guys with us and educating us. You always give a great presentation, Angelo.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys for giving me the time. And again, just hoping I can bring a little value here. And I would throw it out there. If there's anything that we missed or anything you think we got incorrect, let us know. Again, we're learning this as we go too. I mean, we got a couple years in. We have an engineering team that has spent a lot of time kind of digging through this. I again did a lot of deep dives onto this in the last few weeks. I've learned that 2010 ADA requirement thing is about 280 pages. So it's pretty intensive. It's like you're going through a lot of information. But again, we know we're not perfect. We strive for perfection. But if there's anything we can do to be better or to provide a product that maybe doesn't exist, let us know. Stern and Fiat are open to all this. It's one of the great things about our companies is our flexibility and ability to pivot.
I'll highlight that as well. One of the only times you get asked about mop sinks is when they need a special mop sink. And you guys have been fantastic about helping me out with, all the custom mop sinks that I do get asked. It's almost always the same one with like the quick turn. Hey, I don't have space below my mop sink for the drain. What can I do? So Stern Williams, great for custom modifications. Angelo, great for providing CEU presentations for us. Thank you all for attending. Hopefully we've addressed all your questions. If you do have others, let me know. We'll set up a conversation with the team, get your questions answered. And if you need help on your next project, try out the spec tool. Have a great rest of the day. Bye for now.
Zach, just FYI, shortly after this meeting, I'll shoot you a PDF of the presentation so you can have that for anybody that reaches out.
Thank you kindly, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.